Welcome to the deep dive. This is where we take the sources you send us, dig into them, and pull out the most interesting bits.
Yep, finding the story behind the information.
Exactly. And today we're diving into something pretty fascinating, a piece you shared about Mexico's, well, wildest laws.
Right. Some really unexpected regulations.
Our mission here isn't just to list them off, though. We want to understand, where did they come from? What are they actually trying to do?
And the cultural context, which is key in Mexico.
Definitely. Mexico, you think vibrant culture, amazing history. But then you see this legal side that seems, well, quirky, maybe even bizarre sometimes.
That contrast is exactly what makes it interesting. Let's unpack some of these.
Okay, so before we jump into specific laws, maybe a bit of background. Mexico's legal system isn't just one thing, is it?
No, not at all. It's this really complex tapestry. You've got threads of indigenous traditions going way back, then the huge impact of Spanish colonial law.
Right.
And layered on top of that, modern democratic principles.
Yeah.
It's a blend.
So these laws are trying to manage a pretty diverse society then. Big cities, rural areas, different traditions.
Precisely. And that's the challenge.
Mm.
You need laws that work across this landscape, laws that balance, say, modernization with preserving cultural identity.
Which probably explains some of the unique approaches we'll see.
Absolutely. And it's worth remembering how these laws are enforced can really vary. It's not always consistent across the board.
Got it. Okay, let's tackle the first one that really jumped out at me. The high heels ban.
Yeah.
So in certain historical places, like Guanajuato or Oaxaca,
Yeah.
with all that beautiful colonial architecture, you might get told off for wearing stilettos.
That's the gist of it, yeah. The main reason is preservation. Think about those old cobblestone streets, ancient ruins.
Mm.
They're actually quite delicate. The pressure from a high heel, all your weight focused on one tiny point, can really damage them over time.
Ah, okay. It's like protecting the heritage.
Exactly. It's a choice, in a way, collective history versus individual fashion in these specific, very protected zones.
And this isn't some ancient rule. It sounds more recent.
It is, relatively speaking. It really gained traction in the late 20th century. Mexico started putting a lot more effort into protecting its UNESCO World Heritage sites.
Right, UNESCO. Big deal.
Huge deal. Mexico has over 30 of them. So, as part of that bigger conservation push, high heels were identified as, well, a risk in certain areas. That led to local rules.
And there was that incident, wasn't there? 2018, Guanajuato, a tourist told to take off her heels.
That's the one. It definitely caused a stir online. People debated, is this fair? How important is preservation versus personal choice? Does it target women unfairly?
And you probably wouldn't see this happen in Mexico City.
Much less likely. Enforcement is pretty selective,
Yeah.
often focused on those specific, highly sensitive historical zones.
So culturally, it's about respecting the past then.
Deeply. There's a real reverence for that historical legacy. And yes, while likely unintentional, there is a gendered aspect because of who typically wears high heels. But mostly, it's practical advice.
Yeah.
Check the rules, wear comfy shoes if you're visiting historic sites.
Okay, moving on. Let's talk about the ban on violent toys.
Right.
This one seems more straightforward on the surface, banning things like toy guns, maybe aggressive action figures.
Right.
The idea is to curb violence, right? Especially for kids.
That's the stated aim, yes. To try and foster a culture of peace from a young age. This gained momentum in the 90s and 2000s.
Crime rates were rising.
Exactly. Concerns about crime, drug violence. There was this idea, drawing on some psychological theories, that maybe limiting exposure to violent play could help.
But the source mentioned it's kind of vague, like what counts as glorifying violence?
That's the tricky part. It's subjective, isn't it? One person's violent toy is another's imaginative prop. That ambiguity makes enforcement difficult. You saw that play out in 2021. A toy store in Mexico City got fined for selling plastic assault rifles. Sparked a big debate.
About whether banning the toys even works, or if it's ignoring bigger issues.
Precisely. Are the toys the problem, or are there deeper social roots to violence? And those psychological studies, were they definitive? Or are there other views? It's complex.
And it, again, probably enforced more in cities than out in the countryside.
Generally, yes, where there's more oversight.
Right.
But it fits into this broader pattern you see in Mexico, trying to tackle violence through different angles, including cultural ones. It affects parents, retailers.
Right. Okay, now for one that really made me pause, banning weird names. In Chihuahua State,
Yes, this one is quite something.
the government actually stops parents from giving kids names they think are, well, weird because they might get bullied. And there's a secret list.
That's correct. It's direct state intervention in a very personal choice. The intention is genuinely protective, trying to shield kids from names considered embarrassing, offensive, or just hard to deal with socially.
But a secret list. Where did this come from?
Well, the law itself passed in 2014. They did look at similar rules elsewhere, though usually those lists aren't secret. It seems there was a rise in really unconventional names. Think Facebook or Batman.
Seriously?
Apparently so. Authorities got worried about the kids. So registry officials can now reject names deemed harmful and push for more traditional ones.
And wasn't there that case? Someone wanted to name their kid Terminator.
Yes, in Ciudad Juarez, they were denied. And that, predictably, fueled a huge public discussion. Parental freedom versus the state protecting a child's future well-being.
And nobody knows what's actually on the list.
It's reportedly over 60 names, but no, it's not public. Which adds to the whole controversy, you could say.
Culturally, what's that about? Why such a focus on names?
It likely points to a strong value placed on community, on social harmony, where names carry real cultural weight. An extremely unusual one could mark a child out, lead to ridicule. So officials see it as a safeguard, even if parents find it restrictive.
Okay, let's switch gears slightly. A more practical one. The keys in the car ban.
Ah, yes. Don't leave your keys in the ignition if you're parked on the street.
Especially in cities like Guadalajara, Monterrey. And
Oh,
the
yeah.
goal is just stop car theft.
Pretty much. Car theft is, well, it's a persistent problem in parts of Mexico. Law enforcement sees leaving keys in the car as making it way too easy for thieves. Simple carelessness, big consequences.
And this dates back to the 2000s, when theft rates were high.
Yeah, it came in response to those rising numbers.
Hmm.
The thinking was, this is facilitating crime, let's try and stop it. You can get fined if caught.
I think I saw something about this. A video went viral. Someone fined outside their own house.
That sounds right. Monterey, 2022, I believe.
Yeah.
It definitely got people talking. Is this practical? Is it fair? How often do people actually leave keys in their car anyway?
Good point.
For most Mexicans who are probably already cautious about theft, it might not change much. But for tourists,
Right. Renting a car, not knowing the local rules, you could easily get caught out.
exactly.
Yeah.
It highlights how crime prevention strategies can be very specific to local conditions. A small thing, but important to know.
Definitely. Okay, last one. Dancing restrictions.
Mhm.
So in some places, more conservative areas like Puebla or Veracruz, you can't just start dancing in public. You might need a permit.
In certain situations, yes. It often applies more to organized street performances, but even spontaneous gatherings can sometimes fall under these rules.
Yeah.
The official reason is maintaining public order, preventing disturbances.
And this has old roots.
It does. Traces back to colonial times, actually, regulating public gatherings. It's been adapted over the years, sometimes linked to concerns about noise or crowding in historic centers.
So you need a permit for planned stuff, but just randomly dancing could also get you told off.
It could, especially in those more traditional areas. There was a report, I think, in 2020 about tourists in Puebla getting a warning for dancing in a plaza without permission.
But you wouldn't expect that in Cancun, say.
Highly unlikely. Enforcement really varies. It reflects local norms. Locals in Puebla probably know they need permits for events. For tourists, it can be a surprise.
So it shows this interesting tension, right? Dance is obviously huge in Mexican culture,
Absolutely central.
but its public expression is sometimes regulated in the name of order or tradition.
Exactly. It's complex. It's not a total ban, but there are hoops to jump through sometimes depending on where you are and what you're doing.
Okay, so wrapping this up, these wild laws, they're actually pretty revealing, aren't they?
They really are. They give you this unique snapshot of Mexican culture, values, how things are governed. You see priorities clearly.
Like preserving heritage, tackling social problems like violence, keeping public order.
All reflected in these rules that might seem odd from the outside, but when you look closer, there's usually a specific reason rooted in history or current challenges.
It makes you think, doesn't it? About what these laws say about Mexican society's priorities and also the difficulty of governing such a diverse place with laws that aren't always applied the same way everywhere.
Definitely. And it's not just Mexico, is it? Lots of countries have their own seemingly strange laws. The source mentioned Japan's dancing rules, Singapore, and chewing gum.
Right.
Each country has regulations shaped by its own unique path. But Mexico's makes that blend of tradition, practicality, dealing with modern issues, makes its legal landscape feel particularly distinct.
So a final thought for you listening. Thinking about these Mexican examples,
Mm.
what regulations in your own town or country might seem a bit bizarre at first glance?
Yeah, and what could be the history or the cultural reason behind them? It's interesting to think about how laws reflect the societies that create them.
Definitely something to ponder. Thanks for joining us for this deep dive.